When I was preparing for this lesson, I was trying to come up with an introduction to this. And a lot of different thoughts went through my mind. I thought I'd tell a story on myself. When Colleen and I found out that we were expecting our first child, we didn't know if it was going to be a boy or a girl. We started coming up with names, ideas, what we would name him. And we knew that if it was a boy, we were going to name him David McKinley. My great-grandfather on my mother's side's name was David Haley, and my great-grandfather on my mother's other side was Clarence McKinley. So we took David McKinley, and that's what the boy's name was going to be. And ultimately, we had a son, and that's what his name is. When it came to the girl, we knew we wanted her middle name to be Evelyn, after my grandmother. And we started talking about first names. And every name that Colleen came up with, she said, well, what about Patricia? I said, no, I dated a girl named Patty. She said, well, what about Lisa? No, I dated a girl named Lisa. What about Lori? No, I dated a girl named Lori. And this went on for a while. And if you hear Colleen tell this story, see she's shaking her head. We got to Rachel, and I said, well, and she said, I don't care, that's her name, that we're done. And what she fails to remember, and I bring this up to her now, and she had no idea I was going to say this morning, that every one of those girls that I dated, most of them I rejected. Some of them rejected me. But every rejection led to, see how happy she should be that I dated all those girls? Have you ever been rejected? How does it feel to be rejected? I remember the first girl that ever broke my heart. I'll never forget it. Now, I've seen pictures of her today. Ugh. I don't know what I was thinking. Well, I dodged a bullet there. But boy, I mean, at the moment, I was just heartbroken. My life was over. I mean, just, what's it feel like to be accepted? To have someone give you their heart. To give you their life. We've all, or most of us, have probably felt that at one time or another in our lives. Jesus was no exception to those feelings. We're at John chapter 7 in our study of the book of John. And this was, I'll be honest with you, this was kind of a difficult section for me to prepare a sermon from, because I'd never preached just from this passage before. But the more I looked at it, the more a couple things started to come to mind. Let's begin reading verse 1 of John chapter 7. He says here, after these things, Jesus walked in Galilee, for he did not want to walk in Judea because the Jews sought to kill him. Now, I'm sure there were a few of those girls that thought about killing me. And, there were a couple times that, my brother wanted to kill me, but they were seeking to kill him. I mean, literally. They were seeking an opportunity to put him to death. Now, I don't know that there'd be any greater rejection than that. Than somebody to want to end your life. The Feast of the Tabernacle was at hand. His brothers, now we're talking about his physical brothers here. James, John, Joseph, Joseph and Mary's other children. Jesus' younger brothers. Said to him, depart from here and go into Judea, that your disciples also may see your works that you are doing. Now, notice what they say here. They're saying the Feast of Tents or Tabernacles is near. You need to go back. He's been in Judea, according to the text here. He's probably been here about 6 months. He's been in Galilee doing his work. He's been away from Judea for 6 months. He's been in Galilee doing his ministry there. Now, if we jump ahead just a little bit, in verse 5 it says, even his brothers did not believe in him. Right? You see that? So what are they saying in verse 3 when they tell him, depart, go into Judea, that your disciples, they don't say that we, that us, or the disciples and we, they say you go to Judea and do these works there, and in the sense of what's being said here, I believe what they're saying is this. They're not followers of Jesus. They don't even believe in him as the Messiah. They've not been following him around Galilee, seeing the things that he's doing. They're doing whatever it is they do, right? They're going to work every day. They're going fishing. They're building tables, whatever. They're going about their lives, while Jesus is out in the countryside preaching and doing his works. And the reports are getting back to his brothers. And maybe even Jesus has come back and told them some of the things that he's taught about or that he has done. Maybe some of the other disciples that are there have reported to his brothers what has been taught and done. And in essence, the brothers of Jesus are saying, if you really are who you say you are. You know, it reminds me of in the wilderness when Satan looks at Jesus and says, if you really are the Son of God, turn this stone into bread or do this, right? And his brothers are saying, if you really are doing these things and you really want to have a following, the Messiah is supposed to come through Judea in Jerusalem, right? You need to go up there and do the things that you're saying you're doing here. You need to go up there and do it. Now, we're going up. We're going up, and you need to come up with us. Because no one does anything in secret while he himself seeks to be known openly. If you do these things, show yourself to the world. Again, I believe the brothers are saying, Jesus, big brother, if you really are doing all these things, if you really are who you say you are, go up to Judea and prove it. Go up there and prove that you are the Messiah. And Jesus responds to them because they don't believe, verse 5. Jesus says, my time has not yet come. Is it time for him to go and walk the last days of earth and be crucified? It's not time yet. And Christ isn't going to allow anybody or anything else to force him into a situation that is on God's time and his plan. And he says, my time's not yet, but your time is already ready. So we talked about this Wednesday night a little bit. What's he telling his brothers? He says, what you're doing here on earth, you do every day. Your time is right now. But it's not my time yet. The world cannot hate you, but it hates me. Because I testify of it, that its works are evil. You go up to this feast. I am not going up to this feast, for my time has not yet fully come. When he had said these things to them, he remained in Galilee. Now, we're going to come back to this text in a moment. We'll find out in verses 10 through 13 that Jesus also goes up. So why does Jesus say, you go up, I'm not going up, my time's not yet? Literally in the Greek, Jesus says, you go up now, I am not yet going up. I'm not now going up. I'm not going to go up with you. You go. And I'll come when I'm ready. Y'all come when I'm ready to come. You all go. But I want you to notice here the rejection of Jesus. How he is rejected by every group that's close to him. So we noticed it a couple weeks ago in chapter 6. Verse 66 says, from that time many of disciples went back and what? They walked with him no more. What did they do, Phil? They rejected him. These were his disciples, his followers. They were following him. They were learning from him. They were listening to him. They were putting their faith and trust in him. And at some point, they decided to leave and not follow him anymore. Does that ever happen today in the church? Do disciples ever decide they're going to reject Jesus and they leave us and walk with us no more? Not only did his disciples reject him, his own people rejected him. In chapter 4, verse 44, how can you believe who receives honor from one another and do not seek the honor that comes from the only God? Wait a minute, that's chapter 5. Sorry. Chapter 4, I thought that didn't sound right. Chapter 4, verse 43. Now after 2 days he departed from there and went to Galilee. For Jesus himself testified that a prophet has no honor where? In his own country and among his own people. Jesus would come into the world and would be despised and rejected. By his own, by the Jews. The people in this community, the people that we were raised with, the people that we went to school with, the people that we work with, the people we live among, do they reject Jesus? But what about us? Not only did the disciples and the people, but also his own family. His own brothers, verse 5, did not believe in him. In fact, Mark says at one time, his own brothers, his own people, they came to him seeking to find him and take him because they thought he was out of his mind. Do our own family members ever reject Jesus? Our brothers and our sisters, our parents, our grandparents, our children? Did they ever reject him? My question for us right now is, how will we let that affect us? Now, we'll talk about why here in a second, but when others of our faith, when other disciples leave the church, will we follow them or will we remain faithful to him? I have known whole families who have left the church because one of them left. I've also known one to stay when everybody else left. Will we reject him because other disciples reject him? Will we reject him because the community rejects him? Happens all the time, right? How will we behave when we go to school? How will we behave when we're out in the community? How will we behave at work? Will we live and act and follow like everybody else, or will we stand up and be the Christians we're supposed to be? Because they reject him, we allow them to influence us to do what? Is it easier to pull someone down or lift them up? How often are we guilty of allowing the people around us to pull us down and keep us from Christ? Others who reject him. What about our own families? Our own brothers? Anybody here like me who has family members that they love, they care about, who reject Jesus? How do we let that affect us? I have known preachers, elders, entire congregations of the Lord's church change from sound to false doctrine because one of their family members decided to live in sin and reject Jesus. Will we too reject him? I mean, okay, so why? Why do they reject Jesus? Well, there's two things here that I think we need to consider. One is there's a hatred of truth, right? Why did they reject Jesus? Why did his own people, why did the scribes and Pharisees, why did the Jews reject him? Well, Paul says in 2 Thessalonians, he said they reject him because they receive not the love of the truth. They didn't love the truth. They hated the truth. Paul would write in Galatians chapter 4, verse 16 and say, have I therefore become your enemy because I tell you the truth. See, a lot of people hate the truth. A lot of people, and I'm one of them, listen, I hate to be told I'm wrong. Who likes to be told they're wrong? But am I ever wrong? Sure. She's not shaking her head as violently as she was earlier. Do we ever err? Do we ever make mistakes? Sometimes we're wrong. We need to be humble enough to admit we're wrong. Sometimes we're wrong. It's okay. Boy, people hate to be told they're wrong. They hate the truth. And the second thing is, they hate being exposed to evil. Earlier, John said that Jesus came into the world, and the darkness of this world hated him. Why? Because he was shining a light on the darkness. And what was that light doing to the darkness? What does light do to darkness? Disperses it, right? Darkness is the absence of light. So if we shut all the lights off, it becomes dark, it's hard to see. And when it's hard to see, it's easier to hide, right? People like to hide their sin. They don't want to be exposed for their hypocrisy and for their sin. These people were exposed, and they didn't like it. Notice again what he says in verse 7 of our text. The world cannot hate you, but it hates me because I testify of it, there's the truth, and that its works are what? Evil. Why do people reject Jesus? It has to be because of these two things. They either hate the truth or they don't like being exposed for the evil that they want to do anyway. But what will we do? It all depends on our opinion of Christ. Whether we accept him or reject him will depend on how we look at him, how we see him, how we feel about him. So I ask this question. What do you think of Jesus? What do you think of Jesus? Who is he? Let's continue in our reading. Look at verse 10. He says, but when his brothers had gone up, then he also went up to the feast, not openly, but as it were in secret. Then the Jews sought him at the feast and said, where is he? And there was much complaining among the people concerning him. Some saying he is what? He's a good man. Others saying, no, on the contrary, he is a deceiver. So some were saying, he's a good man. You know, he's going about doing good things. He's going about teaching the truth. He's a good man. Now, listen, there's a lot of people today that see Jesus just as a good man. They think he taught good things. They think he teaches the things that if we do these things, we could live a good life. He's just a good man. Right? He's a prophet of God. But then there were others that said, no, he's a deceiver. He's not preaching the truth. He's deceiving the hearts and minds of people. And there are people today that teach that Jesus is what? A deceiver. That the things that Jesus taught and the things that we believe are true. We're twisting things. We won't see things clearly like the world sees things, and Jesus and Christians are just deceivers. But what do we think of Jesus? Is he the Christ? The Son of God? Jesus asks his disciples this question in Matthew 16, doesn't he? Who do men say that I, the Son of Man, am? Some say that there are Jeremiah, or John the Baptist, Jeremiah, or Elias, one of the prophets. Jesus said, but who do you say that I am? And Peter answers and says unto them what? I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God. You see, we have a choice this morning to accept him or deny him, to despise and reject him or love and accept him. but it's going to be based upon how we feel about him. If you just think he's a good man, it's not enough. If you think he's a deceiver, you'll never come to him. But if you think he is the Lord, the Christ, you have no option but to come to him and to bow yourself at his feet. Now, verse 13 says, however, no one spoke openly of him for fear of the Jews. So the question is, what will you do with Jesus? Will you despise and reject him? Or will you love and accept him? And why? Will you do it because of the love that he showed for you? Or will you refuse because you're afraid of the Jews? Because you're afraid of what your family might say, your people might say, your brothers may say, the community may say. Will you love and accept him or despise and reject him? That's the simple choice that this text is teaching us. And if we'll accept him, he will accept us and cleanse us, free us to serve him and live with him forever. How do I do that? Well, it comes to humbling myself and being willing to submit myself to obedience. Repenting, changing my life, living for him, not myself. Confessing him, not just here in front of this audience, but in our everyday life with our words and our actions. It's being buried with him in baptism, so that in the likeness of his death, I may also be in the likeness of his resurrection. Romans 6, verses 3 through 6.